Good afternoon and welcome to BizTech's Personal Finance Show. Now, today our focus is on helping you better understand peer-to-peer lending from an investor standpoint as well as from a borrower's perspective. Now, here to give us insights on how to achieve this is Tengku Mudzaffar, founder and CEO of microLEAP, a peer-to-peer lending platform. Now, thanks for coming on the show, Danny.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Now, Danny, break it down for us before we start. What is P2P financing?
So P2P financing is basically an alternative financing method of raising financing. So normally people will go to banks and get a bank loan, for example. Now the thing is, not everyone are able to get a bank loan because most banks, they want at least 3 years worth of operations. They want to see your revenue going up every year. So a lot of businesses, especially micro enterprises that we're trying to help, they find it very difficult to get bank loans. So what P2P financing does is an alternative avenue of getting this financing. So these would be for microLEAP, it would be small businesses, your makcik in Kuala Pilah that wants 10,000 ringgit for kedai runcit to buy more stock. They will find it difficult to go to banks because they don't have that 3 years worth of operations. So P2P financing was set up in Malaysia and is regulated by the Securities Commission of Malaysia to allow businesses raise financing not from the bank, but people like you or me, anyone on the street, retail investors can become their own banks and basically lend to these companies.
Okay, and this is where microLEAP comes in. So how does your platform facilitate this whole process?
Okay, so what we do is our platform allows what we call an issuer. An issuer is a borrower that issues an investment note. This investment note is hosted on microLEAP's platform, ready for investment. Now, the investors or lenders will look at this investment note and find certain particulars like, it is paying X% per annum. This is the business. This is how much they need. This is what they want it for. So that the investors will come in and with a minimum investment of only 50 ringgit, they can invest and lend to a company that needs this financing.
Okay, now I'm going to come back to you in terms of the merits of investing on a P2P platform. But I think one of the things I want to ask you first is, because you are regulated by SC, obviously that regulatory framework that governs you protects investors. How does it do that?
Yes, so we have very strict guidelines given out by the Securities Commission in Malaysia. Now, the Securities Commission in Malaysia only has given out licenses to P2P financing in Malaysia to only 11 operators. So it's very hard and difficult to actually get a license. For example, in China, there were 2,000 P2P operators that just mushroomed out,
yes.
Going crazy. And end of the day, people lost money. So Malaysia recognized that fact and looked at only good companies, people with good backing, good directors and owners on board to be able to have a P2P license. Now, according to these guidelines, which every P2P operator has to follow, investors, which are the lenders, and issuers, which are the borrowers, are protected. So how they're protected, for example, investors, we have to set up trust accounts for these investors. So all the financing, before they get dispersed to an issuer, goes to the trust accounts, which is separate from the operator's money. So there's a complete segregation between the operator's funds and the client's funds. There are also certain regulations and guidelines in terms of how we take care of our issuers and also, of course, how we take care of the investors. So it's a very protected and regulated industry to be in.
Now, Danny, how has microLEAP been financed since you've started in 2019, I believe?
Yes, so we actually were set up as an entity, as an LLP, limited liability partnership, in April 2018. Okay. We were given go live status by Securities Commission by October 2019. Now, how we're funded is a mixture of, one is Bunak Holding Sdn Bhd, which is my family company. And also certain partners, my COO, CMO, and CTO are also partners within the LLP. But recently we raised our first proper seed round from a public listed company called MAA Group Berhad. MAA Group Berhad put in 1.25 million into our company. But added to that, they will be giving us an advance of 2 million ringgit. And also, which was the really sweetener for the deal, they're willing to put in 10 million ringgit into our investment notes to help give liquidity for many of our issuers that need this financing.
So that's quite different. That's in fact a game changer for you, because essentially you've got this line of financing to finance projects straight away.
Yes, correct. So that's why we like the deal very much, because they want to put the money where their mouth is. So they had a lot of faith in us and what we do. And with that, they said, okay, we want to put 10 million through investment notes, your investment notes, to help build up your portfolio and push your company forward.
Okay, now I want to talk to you about, for me as a company, if I want to get financing, I may be a normal SME. I can opt for P2P financing. I can do banks. I can go to banks, and you've mentioned that. You said, sometimes for a micro enterprise, it's hard to get bank financing. But if I'm an SME, I've been running for many years, I have banks as an option. I have venture capital as an option. I also then have licensed money lending companies as an option. Why should I choose P2P? Okay,
so obviously, options are great for SMEs and micro enterprises to get financing. Of course, there's debt, which is bank loans or P2P, but there's also equity in terms of venture capital, but also ECF, equity crowdfunding, which is another licensed operator by Securities Commission. So there's a whole host of ways that you can get finance. So you look at what you want, how easy it is to get financing, the interest rate or profit rate if it's Islamic, and you choose which is best suited for your kind of company. Now, if you go to bank loan, obviously they offer the lowest interest rates. But as with most banks, they only lend to companies that don't need the financing. Really,
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So they look at the best creditworthy entities or businesses to finance. So what happens is a lot of the ones that maybe are not as strong in terms of credit-wise, but they are making revenue, they're making profit, they can't get a bank loan. So they find it difficult. Then they will look at alternative sources. So that's why P2P comes in. So our interest rates or profit rates are higher than banks, but the trade-off is it is much easier to get financing from us. An average turnaround time for a bank loan will be anywhere in the region of 3 months and above.
And above.
For P2P financing, it could be 2 weeks to 30 days in terms of getting your financing.
Fantastic. And that speed to get the funds into your account is critical for many SMEs and micro SMEs.
Yes, correct.
Now, for an investor standpoint now, why should I invest in a P2P platform?
Okay, so investors now are looking for yield. This pandemic, every single central bank has been slashing interest rates. Malaysia is now the official policy rate is at 1.75%, and it was 3%, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So people are slashing. So if you put money in your fixed deposit, you're going to get next to nothing at the moment. If you look at EPF, our national provident fund, they were paying a dividend of 5.2% for 2020, and even worse, for the Sharia compliant account, they're only paying 4.9%. Now with P2P financing, your average yields or returns will be in the range of between 10 to 15% per annum. Some will go up to 18% per annum. So the yield differential is huge. Now, obviously, the trade-off is it is more risky in terms of an investment than a, say, fixed deposit. But that's where certain strategies can come in to diversify your risk.
Now, let's talk about that. Now, I want to know how to keep my money safe. There's no such thing as a 100% safe investment. When you've got higher yields, as you pointed out, you've got you want higher return, you want higher yields. There is also a high level of risk involved. On your side as a platform, how do you ensure that you know your customer and you do the KYC or what they call eKYC analysis?
Yeah. So we on microLEAP, our returns are average between 10 to 15% per annum. We are Shire compliant as well, which is what we want to push. Now, in terms of our analysis of the business or micro enterprises that we do our credit risk analysis is, we look, we have a proprietary credit algorithm that is in place. So
do you develop that yourself, or do you buy a base product and develop it further?
No, we develop it ourselves with our developer.
Okay.
So the inputs that you take into our credit risk algorithm is one, obviously, as only businesses are allowed to be financed under SC rules. No personal financing is allowed. So they have to be set up at least as an enterprise. So the data is there in terms of the credit bureaus. So we have an API into a credit bureau that feeds in data in terms of what their borrowings are. Have they been default? Are they late? Are they late in other non-bank financings? Is the owner or the director bankrupt? All this information is all there. That feeds into our credit algorithm. But also, what is different from the others, what we do is we use psychometric testing. Now, the reason we do that is the micro enterprises that we want to help, your makcik in Kuala Pilah, they may not have a strong credit history. They may not have a credit card, they may not have a bank loan. So for traditional bank, it's difficult to credit score them. But using an alternative credit scoring method, which we use, which is psychometric testing, this is basically gives a test and an output of their willingness to repay their financing. So how it works is the issuer or borrower will go through 20 questions. There are two options, A and B, and simple questions are you more likely to do A or likely to do B? And from that, you can get quite a detailed credit report on your borrower. So we use that into our credit risk algorithm to come out on a low, medium, or high risk rating. And from that will be your profit rate or interest rate that the borrower will pay.
Okay, that's very interesting because essentially you are blending algorithm on the organizational aspect, but then also a personal aspect, which is your psychometric testing. And that, for example, has been proven very successful, but on a different level and obviously at a less automated level with the likes of Grameen Bank, because the individual borrower is really the focal point when you're talking about very, very small loans.
Yes, correct. So for us, the psychometric testing works very well with an enterprise because the enterprise there's only one owner really, and so she or he calls the shots. And with that psychometric testing, really gives you a feel of how well that company or enterprise is in terms of credit.
Okay, and let's take a look at numbers. What's the volume of loans you have dispersed on your platform, and what has been your default rate so far?
So the volumes we have dispersed is about 1.5 million ringgit since October 2019. And we are, of that 1.5 million, 97% of those are Sharia financing.
Okay.
In fact, actually, when we launched in 2019, it was only conventional financing.
Okay.
We launched our Sharia compliant product in April of 2020. And ever since then, our volume skyrocketed well up. In the space of 5 months, it grew over 1,000%. So it shows that there's a huge demand for Sharia compliant assets or Sharia compliant investments for many of our investors. Now, we're happy to say that we are, at the moment, we are 0% default rate. Now, how we manage that is that default management always starts at the credit risk stage.
Yes.
So we ensure that the issuers that we have on our platform are making revenue and making profit, and they can afford our financing. So our debt service ratio is originally it was 60%, so 60% debt compared to the operating profit.
Right.
But due to the pandemic, it went a bit more strict. So we have set 50% debt compared to their operating profit. But also we have to make sure that they can afford this financing. So we want to be responsible lenders. So we have to make sure that they are in the right business. We know that the next year or two that they will be in the right business, that they will thrive, that they will survive. We're very keen on businesses that have pivoted online during this pandemic. So they may sell on Lazada, sell on Shopee or Grab. These are the businesses that we know will weather the storm. So that's why our default rate is 0%. When you compare it to the market, in Malaysia, the default rate ranges from the worst, which is 9% default rate, all the way down to between 1 to 3% default rate.
Yeah, so that's why you are performing. I mean, based on my research as well, you're definitely performing better than most of the market players in Malaysia at the moment. But let me ask you something, because there are 11 of you. What level of support do you think has the government given the platform owners as well as SMEs and micro SMEs?
Well, the level of support by the government is good. So in fact, the government has a program called MySIF, Micro Investment Fund, so that for every investment note, the government will fund 20% of that note already. So which helps us and shows that the government has faith in what we are all trying to achieve. And also, the Securities Commission has been a great supporter for all of us. We do roadshows online and offline, more online obviously because of the pandemic, but they have been very supportive, and they are looking at ways of how they can expand this regulated market. So it has been very good.
Now, Danny, let me ask you something. What are some of the success stories that you can share with us that of businesses that you've helped to grow as a result of your lending to them?
Okay, yes. So as I said before, we are focused on at the moment Sharia compliant financing, but more importantly is micro enterprises. Now, the reason we focus on micro enterprises is that, as our tagline says, small steps to bring impact. A small amount of financing has a huge impact on micro enterprises than a big SME or medium-sized SME. So that's why we are very keen in helping these very micro businesses get financing, because they will help them, grow massively in terms of what they were before. So one example is that she sells pisang goreng. She has a pisang goreng restaurant in Johor. She raised 40,000 ringgit from us for her stock. Now, the business has been in operation for over 30 years, but they only were registered formally as an enterprise about 2 years ago. So she tried for a bank loan, she couldn't get it because she didn't fill that 3-year registration requirement by banks. But we looked at their accounts, looked at the business. It was great. They're doing well. So we managed to raise the 40,000 ringgit in the space of 2 days for them.
Okay.
So they got the financing. They renovated the store. They gave us pictures before and after, and they were very happy. Like, look, thank you for the financing. That 40,000 ringgit changed the whole aspect of this 30-year-old business that hadn't really changed for 30 years. And they had more customers coming in, and they're doing very well. So this is the kind of impact investments that we like to push for our investors to get involved in.
Now, Danny, final question here. Obviously, if I'm an investor, I want to make returns, and 10 to 15% sounds like a pretty good return. I also, as an investor, like many other people, want to make a difference. And impact investing is something I would like to participate in. So this sounds great. What do I need to do if I want to start investing?
So for us, it's very simple. Because we use non-face-to-face KYC, we do not have to meet physically for you to be an investor on our platform. So everything is done online. You would fill in the platform, the application form. You upload your passport if you're non-resident, or your IC if you're Malaysian, and then and then upload your bank account statement, and that's it. we will do the KYC or know your customer checks. We will look at, we do the AML checks, the anti-money laundering checks, etc. Politically exposed person checks. And once you are fine, your account is set up, and all you have to do is just top up into your available balance, and you can start investing.
And how long?
When it comes to how long it take?
Yeah.
If everything is fine, it can take anywhere between 5 hours to a day to get.
Very quick.
So it's very, very quick. It's how quickly we can do our checks and get back to you. Well, so I want to go back to your account about impact investments. So impact investments for microLEAP is key. That's what we are all about. So we're not only giving out microloans, but we also we will insure our issuer on personal accident insurance for free. So in the event that the issuer has an accidental death or disability, our insurance partner will cover that financing that they have with microLEAP. They pay to microLEAP, and microLEAP pay to all the investors. So that headache of thinking of what happens if I have an accident, I can't pay back my loan, that is covered by microLEAP. Added to that, we also offer free online video training on basic debt management and basic bookkeeping for the issuer, for the borrower. So your makcik Kuala Pilah, maybe she doesn't have the financial literacy skills that many of us have. She never had the opportunity, but they have to pass these modules before they get the financing. So they know that what to do with the debt, they know how to do basic bookkeeping, and that kind of free service gives the investors comfort that the investments will be okay.
Danny, thank you very much for your insights, both on your company and the industry, and also opening the minds of our audience to the possibilities of making great returns via P2P investing, and also making a difference in people's lives. We've been speaking to Tengku Danny Mudzaffar, founder and CEO of microLEAP, on BizTech's Personal Finance Show. I'm Brian Fernandez. Check out www.biztech.asia for business and technology conversations.